Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. All right, so today we are going to be looking at roles. All right, we're going to be looking at roles in AWS. Now, basically, let's try to understand what a role is. All right, because as we go on this journey, we're going to be using it a lot. Okay, we're going to be creating roles, all right, for different use cases, and we're going to be needing it, all right, as we move on. Now, what exactly is a role? Now, the same way that you assign, or the same way that you create a user, and then you assign a permission to that user that defines what the user is able to do within your system, all right, that is also the same thing a role is, right? Now, a role is not a user, right, but it is used basically to assign permission to services, all right, on AWS. And what basically a role does is that it allows one service to talk to another service on your behalf. Okay? Now, we have a lot of use cases for that, right? For example, if I have an application hosted on my EC2 instance, for example, let's say I have an application and that application will have to talk, all right, to my S3 bucket. Maybe it's an application that people upload something, right? They upload, maybe they fill a form and then they have to upload their CV, for example. All right. In fact, we're going to actually see an application like that, okay, when we get to the project side of things. Okay. So let's say we have this application, and then this application, people have to fill a form, they have to put their name, their email address, and then they have to write maybe a short message about themselves, and then they have to upload their resume. Now, and we have configured our application in such a way that when they upload their resume and they submit, right, the resume they submit should actually go into our S3 bucket, but then the URL should appear in our RDS database table. Okay. Now, how do you configure your application to talk to your S3 bucket? How do you do that? Now, that is where the role actually comes into the picture. Now, on that your EC2 instance, you can actually configure your access key and secret key, but that's a security risk, right? Because when you configure your access key and secret key on an EC2 instance, somebody can actually fetch those keys and use it, all right, when you're not aware. So what you do instead is that you create a role. Now, you come here, you click on roles, for example, and then you create a role. Now, under the role section, you have the different entity types, all right? But then for most of the use case, right, you click on AWS, and then you come here to the service or use case, and then you select EC2, all right? And then you click on next, and then here, you can see that the same policy that we assign to our user or to our group is also the same thing that we're seeing here. So here, in my own case, my EC2 instance that is hosting my application, I want that instance to talk to my S3 bucket, which means I want to grant the application hosted on that EC2 instance what you can call a put, all right, access, which means when people upload something, all right, it should go directly to my S3 bucket. So that's more like a write access kind of a thing, right? So what do I do? So here, I can come here and then I can search for S3. I can say S3 full access, for example. But of course, now that I have an understanding that I can create my own permissions, right? I can also go to the permissions page, create my own permissions. For example, I can go back to IAM, all right, and then come here to policies, all right, create my own policy, for example. And then here, I'm going to choose S3 as a service, all right, just an example. And then right here, I'm going to, of course, select the actions that I want to allow. And the action I want to allow basically is I want to allow a write access action, right? So basically, I want somebody to be able to put something into my bucket, right? Which means they should be able to put object, right, into my bucket. So here I have put object, okay? So perhaps that's the only permission that I need, okay, for this, application. So I can say put object, and then that's all that I need to do. And then I'll say all resources, basically, I'm going to attach it to all resources, all right? Or I can also be specific to basically specify the bucket, right? So I can specify the bucket name, all right, the resource object name, the bucket and all of that. Or I can also basically just say any bucket, any object name, and then I can say add ARN, right? So which means I'm saying, just apply to any bucket, really. I'm not even concerned about, a specific bucket. Or if you don't like that, you can also specify the bucket you want that policy to apply to, okay? But just to make things simple, I want to give put object access. I'll say next, and then I'll come here and then call my policy S3, all right? I can say web app, all right? I can say web app S3, all right, access. Just give it a name that makes sense, that people can relate to. And then I can put a description here to just say, allow, all right, I can say allow the PHP app, the PHP app to upload object to S3, for example, okay? So next thing I will say create policy. Now, once this policy has been created, all right, so if I scroll down, or basically if I come here to filter by type, I can say I want to filter by customer managed policy, and then this is the name of my policy. So let's copy that name, and then I can go back to my role and say I want to create a role, and then the role is applicable to EC2 in my case. Say next, and then here I'll just basically put in the name of the policy that I just created, and then I'll select that policy, and then I'll say next, and then I'll give my role a name, so I can call this role, EC2, all right, PHP app, okay, and then I would basically just say create the role. Now, what do? I will basically have to go to my EC2 server and then attach this role to my EC2 server, and with this permission, the application that I have hosted on the EC2 server will now have the permission, all right, to put object to my bucket that I've defined within that application configuration. Okay, now we're going to do this by the time we get to the project side, all right, of this particular AWS, all right, that we're looking at right now. But I'm just showing you what a role is. So to just recap everything that I've said, a role is basically granting a service access to perform operations on another service on your behalf. So in this case, you're not creating a user, you are not attaching policy to a user, you are creating a role that is actually carrying a policy, and then this role is going to be attached to, all right, a service, and that service is going to assume that role. And when a service assumes a role, it inherits the policy that has been assigned or attached to the role, which means the service now is able to carry out activities based on the policy attached to the role that it has assumed. Okay, so in our case, our EC2 instance is able to assume this role and is able, all right, to talk to our S3 bucket, all right, and all of that. So our application will not have any kind of permission error when somebody tries to upload and tries to submit their form and all of that. Okay, so by the time we get to the project side, all right, we're going to tie all of these things together, and I'm sure at that point it's going to make a lot more sense. All right, so with this short video, I believe now that you understand what a role is, all right, and what a role is used for, and how it differs, all right, from a user on AWS. All right, the last thing I would like to show us before I leave your screen is basically talk about the other way by which you can actually access your AWS environment. I talked about the console access the other time, and then of course I mentioned about the access key and the secret key. So if I click on this user, for example, and then I come here to security credentials, right? I can come here, all right? I can come here, you have managed console access. I can click on these and say disable console access, right? I can disable console access for this user, which means the user will not be able to log in through the console, all right, anymore, okay? Now, of course, you can do that. And then another thing you can do is you can generate what you call access keys. All right, access keys, you can do that. So if you click on create access key, you can specify, all right, the use case. So in our case, the use case is going to be command line. We want to interact with our AWS, all right, using the command line. So I'm going to select command line, and then I'm going to say I understand, and then I'm going to say next. All right, you don't need to give a description, just click on create access key. Now, with this access and secret key, you are able to communicate with your AWS, all right, environment. Okay, so here, I can grab this access key, I can grab the secret key, but how do I use this credential, all right, to interact with my AWS account? Now, in the setup class where I talked about the tools and the things you need to install, right, I already showed you how to, all right, download and install, all right, the AWS CLI. But just to quickly recap, you can actually go here and say AWS CLI, all right, download. Okay, and then it takes you here. You can click on this first one here, all right, and then you can follow the instructions that you have here. So for the operating system that you're using, you can go here, click on Linux, click on Mac, click on Windows. But I showed this to us using the Chocolati, all right, package manager for Windows. So if you're using Chocolati, you can actually use that to install, all right, the AWS CLI, which I actually very highly recommend. And if you're using Mac OS, you can also use the Homebrew to do that, all right, as well. Okay, so I'm not going to go over that installation because we've done that already. So if you don't know how to do that, I plead with you to watch the video on how to set up your tools and all of that. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up my terminal here. All right, since I have an access key and a secret key, so I'm going to open up my terminal. And the first thing I need to do is to confirm if I have the AWS installed. So I'm going to type AWS. Now, if the AWS CLI has been installed on my system, then I should have, all right, these outputs. So this output basically tells me that my AWS CLI has been installed, right? So how do I configure my access key and secret key? So what I do, I basically say AWS, all right, configure, and then I press enter. And then here it is asking me to input my access key and my secret key. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here. All right, I'm going to copy the secret key. I'm going to paste that here. All right, and then I'll select my region. All right, of course, whatever it is that you're connecting from, you can select it. So let's say US East 1, for example. That's my default region, which can be you can override that by the time you're deploying certain things. And then I'm going to press enter. All right, from here. Now I have configured my keys, I've configured, all right, my, permissions and all of that. But what this user can do, right, what I can do rather with this key is actually still tied to the permission assigned to the user that generated this key. Okay, so if you look at this user very well, if I click on the user, what are the permissions that this user has? Okay, now the permission will also still determine what you can do with the keys. Okay, because I mean, whether you're logged in on the console, whether you're logged in through the CLI, what you can do is still limited, all right, to the permissions assigned to your user. Okay, so the fact that we are logged in through, all right, the CLI does not mean we have every right and privileges. No, it is still determined, our access level is still determined by the permission assigned to our account. Okay, so here now, if I come and I say AWS S3 LS, for example, right? Let's see what we're going to get. Now you can see it's telling me what? Access denied. Because I mean, if you look at the permission that this user has, there's nothing like S3 here, right? There's nothing like S3. Okay, so if I come here and I say AWS, all right, IAM-users, I hope I got it right. All right, -user list or something. I don't know if this is correct. Let me see. Okay, yeah, that's not correct. That's not the correct syntax. All right, so that's not the correct syntax. So you can actually do AWS, I think IAM-user or something, right? That's not the correct syntax. Now, if you want to get the correct syntax, all right, on how to use these AWS CLI, right, you can actually go here to, let's see, AWS CLI, all right, command reference, okay? So here you will see all the commands that you can use, all right, with the AWS CLI, right? It's not, I mean, you don't have to memorize any of these, okay? Or at least this command line reference is actually there to guide you on what to do. So if I come here to IAM, so let me search for IAM. So let's say that's the command that I'm trying to do something with. So I'm going to search for IAM right there. So it's going to give me different things here. All right, so this one is IAM policy assignment, get IAM. All right, so I'm just going to click on this one, IAM. So click on that. All right, so once you click on that, it's going to give you, all right, the IAM is going to take you to the page of that particular service, and then it's going to show you all the available commands. You can see it right here. These are the available commands that you can use with this particular, all right, service. So here you can see create user, delete policy, delete user. All right, so you can see get user. All right, so let me see. The one we're looking at is basically we want to list our users, right? So let's see if we can find it here. So now I can see list users here. So if I click on list users, All right, so let's see how to use this command, all right, for this particular service. So if you scroll all the way down, it's going to show you an example. All right, so this is the right syntax. I can copy this now, all right, and then I can come here, okay, I can clear my screen, and then I can drop this here and then press enter, and let's see what this will give to us. All right, so here I can see that I am able to list the users, all right, in my account. And that is because, all right, my user here has these read-only access, change user permissions, particularly this read-only access and this other one, all right, allows these users to be able to perform this operation. So what your user can do, whether you're logged in on the console, whether you're using the CLI, is still limited, all right, by the permissions, all right, or the policy that is attached to that user. Okay, so take note of this, URL. I'm going to put it in the description of this video. You can also go through, all right, this reference and just basically see for yourself how you can use any, all right, of the services, the commands you can use with them, all right, based on the, on the service, right? Any command you want to use for any service. These are the services. So you can click on any of the services and then it will show you the list of commands that you can use with any of those, all right, services. Okay, so I hope you've been able to learn something, all right, from this video, and I'll see you, all right, on the next one when we talk about another important AWS service, the S3 bucket. All right, so thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like, and don't forget to share. Until next time, all right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.